Coming back to then social anxiety, back from what we've just discussed, it could potentially mean that social anxiety is a catalyst to you essentially having that burnout period or imposter syndrome and then burnout and then having that of enlightenment quicker. Do you know what I mean? What do you think about
I think that's right. I think that's true. But I don't think that the way we all live our lives at the moment helps us to be able to deal with any sort of issue that's going on in our mind. I was only today talking with a friend who is just concerned about his partner that, with a young family, and you all know this yourself when you've got a young family, there are a lot of pressures in bringing up kids today, also trying to work and getting kids to nursery. And there are things that you're not really able to express so fully with your partner that you then hold things, you kind of put the lid on how you're feeling. You get the same rush of hormones that you would get if you were faced with a grizzly bear or something about to attack you. But the body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imaginary threat. So when you are feeling a bit concerned or anxious about something that you've not discussed with a family member, with an aunt, with a grandparent, somebody who lives close by, we all lead such isolated lives. I can't remember, I heard a census on how many people live a single life. It's a horrendous proportion. Whether it was something like 60 or 70% of people live in single units. That's not really how nature intended. We're groups, we're family, we're pack animals. But when we do have issues that cause us concern that we haven't expressed and opened up, and we get that sudden rush of cortisol and adrenaline because the brain is saying, whoa, fight or flight, this is something that you're not really very happy with. The brain can't tell the difference whether it's a real threat or an imaginary threat. So you're constantly having these chemicals pumped around your body and they've got nowhere to go. So then you put the lid on it, you push back, you push through, you say to yourself, come on, you're okay, you can do that. But at some point, the body's going to react. And that's when burnout happens. That's when breakdowns happen. That's when people are pushed to the point where they can't take anymore. That's also what social anxiety is all about. That, we don't like to admit that we don't think we're good enough. We don't like to admit that we don't think we're pretty enough or that we've got enough or that we are anxious about having enough. We don't have the outlets to be able to talk to people. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it, that there are so many therapists and counsellors and coaches in the world, and yes, doing a great job, but having to pay for a service like that, which years ago would have been quickly caught early enough, being dealt with by grandparents and aunts and uncles and people who care about you. Because what we're trying to do as coaches, counsellors, therapists is, first of all, establish the relationship. We need that person who we're talking to trust us. And that takes time. But in former times, when we had relatives who knew us, loved us, and we trusted and they trusted us, that process, you didn't have to go through that initial process of building the relationship, the trust. Can I talk to this person? It all spilled out. And people noticed as well. They were more aware. They're more caring and they were more aware of what was happening within the family circle instead of this society where we're thinking about ourselves mainly. We're not so aware of the other person or aware of what we are thinking and feeling.
So essentially, social anxiety, imposter syndrome, I'll keep tying those together because that's the main core of this podcast. The increase in it in the population is down to more people living isolated because we have the internet, so there's no need to go and speak to your mate face to face or go and see your mother. You can just ring her up or ignore if you so wish. And a lack of vulnerability. Those two things. Is it safe to say that those two areas have become increased, so lack of vulnerability, lack of communication, and they are what's causing us to have this warped sense of danger that then has caused these heightened issue with social anxiety? Or do you think that was always the issue? Social anxiety has always been an issue.
I think it's particularly with the internet, with Instagram, with Facebook, with all those platforms where people are able to show themselves at their very best so that others start to make comparisons and think they're not good enough, which is where that imposter syndrome kicks in to start with. But I think also, you look at the divorce rates, you look at the split families, you look at fractured families. I don't think it's so much vulnerability. I don't think people enable themselves to feel vulnerable with other people. I think they feel insecure in themselves but don't like to admit to it, and therefore they're not actually showing vulnerability. I think the way life has gone with the divorce rate being so high, with people, I don't know, why is it that everybody's... I found out actually what the figure is. I think it was about 60 or 70% of people are living in one-person homes. Well, isn't that ridiculous with the price of fuel and the price of energy and the price of utilities? And it's a nonsense, isn't it? It's not sustainable.